my name is Scott. Welcome to the Workshop Recorder. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a, not quite a review, but some impressions about a new airbrush I've got. So let's take a look. Now, what I normally have used for the past, I guess 10 years has been this one here. This is an Evolution, Harder & Steenbeck Evolution 2-in-1. Made in Germany, well made. Thing is smooth and polished well. It's well crafted, and it was when I bought it 10 years ago, a very expensive airbrush to replace a Badger that I had been using for a while. I still use this airbrush. I like this airbrush. I enjoy using it. I've gone through several needles now in 10 years. What I like about an airbrush like this is that you can take this cup off. You can put on a larger cup if you want to. So you've got this big bulky cup. Sometimes I just want to do some tires or some landing gear or something small, and this cup comes in very handy, and it's not in the way, and you can see what you're doing a little bit better, and you can get into tight spaces. Sometimes you actually find, like I do some 172 scale twin engine aircraft, and sometimes you got to get right up close to the surface that you're spraying, like that close, but you've got to get it up in between an engine and the fuselage, on the wing bottom, the wing root, and it's hard to get in there with a huge cup. Prior to that, and I still use this airbrush. This is a Pache Model F. It's a single action airbrush. You control the paint flow by rotating this, and the cup goes into the bottom. You push it, paint comes out. This still has uses for me. I like the spray pattern of this little workhorse, and it's been around for a while. I generally use it now for flat coats and gloss coats and heavier, thicker things. What I have now is this Badger Renegade Krome, and this Badger is growing on me. I bought it last year. Badger had a birthday sale in which they offered, the owner offered a $50 airbrush from any of his airbrushes he had, and so I chose this one because I want to get some fine lines, and this one is touted to get down there and give you some really super fine 1mm lines, and that's what I need for some of the projects I do. And so my impressions of this airbrush, my impressions are generally favorable. It is not built and finished as well as the Harder & Steenbeck, and the way I describe it, you can see here the little the tip here. It's like it was machined but not quite finished. I can't show it to you, it's too small to get my camera to focus on, but there's roughness to that little piece there. Also, the tip of the needle is exposed there, and only these two airflow directing, I forgot the name of them, airflow directing prongs, they actually have a function. Those two needles are all the protection it has, and so when I store it, I actually back the needle out a bit just so I don't drop something or bung it up. But it's not quite as smoothly polished, and it doesn't quite have the high performance feel of the Harder & Steenbeck, but it performs better. So the way I kind of think about it is this is built like a MiG, while the Harder & Steenbeck is built like a Jaguar or a Spitfire. There's a lot of attention to detail, a lot of polish and finish to it. This is heavier, it's bigger, it's larger, and it has this cup that cannot be removed, which comes in, comes in handy for spraying things and not having to, take your cups off and deal with an O-ring in there. At the same time, it's big, and I can't get it into tiny places I need to get it into. That's probably the only thing I don't really like about this, is the bigness of it. It's kind of bulky. It has this little plastic gizmo that looks incredibly cheap and doesn't really add anything to the airbrush except a place for your finger to rest, and I don't think that's really a big selling point. To me, it's not. The button's nice and big, everything functions well. It has a real nice and smooth lever stop, which you can screw in or screw out, and it's calibrated with these numbers. I don't know when you would actually ever use those numbers. Hey, but it looks good. You can dial this in, and the little plunger will stop the backwards travel of your needle. And almost every airbrush has that, at least every quality airbrush. And that way, if you're trying to do some fine work and your hands are getting a little bit tired and you're fatigued, you don't push down on here and pull it back. with a spasm or something, and ruin your model. So overall, it's just your basic airbrush. However, it gets really, really fine. I've done some really nice and impressive work that's made me really glad to have this airbrush. And so overall positive. If you're looking to do some really fine work, this is for you. I'll show you what I'm working on right now. This is a 172 scale Italian aircraft. It's a Fiat CR 25, and I have to get that Italian camouflage on there in 172 scale. I've got the green on there. I'm going to come back with the brown next, and I'll show you some of that brown spray. But it allows me to get down in there with Mr. Paint straight out of the bottle and put a camo on there like that, which is very thin. And you'll see kind of these faded stripes and lines and spots in between the camo. That's on purpose. That's there because the edges actually and the tidiness of the model pattern was too much. If you look on the prototypes, they have a lot of overspray and little drag lines like that, where the guy in the paint booth, literally just moved his sprayer over without bothering to lift it off, and you get these little trailing lines. But that's what I'm working on, and it allows me, this airbrush allows me to get some real nice work. That the green modeling there is about an hour and a half worth of work. Very slow work when you're spraying that small. And with Mr. Paint, it's not, you're not laying down paint and then that's it. You've got to build it up in layers. But I'll show you what I mean. So if I'm trying to get, if I can handle this without breaking it, if I'm trying to get down in here, I need to get close up. And you see that gigantic paint cup is in the way. So I can't get down in there the way I want to. I've got to do some creative contortions. But that's the only pitfall of this airbrush, other than the fact that the needle's exposed a little more than I'd like it to be. I believe I have the 0.2 millimeter needle in there. I'd have to look at what I ordered, but it's the finest needle you can get for this. So this is what I use for my fine work. Nice and hefty, does well, and I'm impressed with this Badger airbrush. Let me show you how it looks in action. Now I'm using about 7 to 8 psi of pressure. It sounds like a lot more when you hear it, but I'm using 7 to 8 pounds of pressure. Now I can get a broad spray pattern like so. I can also come in here and do some real fine work. I don't know how well you can see on my camera, but if I have good control, I'm contorting myself for the sake of the camera, so it's a poor position to airbrush in, but I can get down and make some very tiny lines approaching 1 millimeter. And if I really needed to do 1 millimeter lines, I would add a little bit of retarder and some flow, some things that improve flow into this Mr. Paint. It's great paint, but I mean, when you're talking about very low pressures and very small sprays, sometimes you actually need a little bit of inhibitor. But you can see I can make these tiny little lines, which is perfect for Italian camouflage, German camouflage, anything where you need to do just some tiny work and modeling like that. I could even paint like a 1/144th scale ME109 and do the modeling on the side, and it would be nicely done, and it would be rendered appropriately in scale. Look at that. I mean, that's a 2 millimeter line. Maybe that's a 1 millimeter line I can get there. Now it's not a consistent flowy line. It's splotchy. But for the things I do, that's really all I need. I could do camouflage, Italian ring style, smoke ring camouflage, if I wanted to, with such a line, on a small 172 scale aircraft, by just, getting up close and little bits of paint coming out. So I like it. Impressions are good. And I'll keep messing with it now until I can get some of these little small quirks worked out. But that's not a bad little Italian camo. So that's what I'm going to put on my my Fiat that I'm working on, and yeah, I'm pleased.
I'm good with numbers, haven't you heard? I have to contract, I have lost everything. Just like the boxer dead on the ring. The cross is twisted, the stars does not shine. The creation's threatening.
Alright, well that's my impressions then of the Badger Krome. I like it. I'll keep using it. It's a success to me. It's a beast of a hefty machine. It's not real polished, and I'm already seeing discoloration on metal after only 2 models I've gone through. But that's okay. I don't care about that as long as it works and works well and does the job. And I think from the response I've received from some of the guys on the Scale Modelers critique group, that the paint job was a success.
There was no summer, could they kill them all? Thought I could hide my eyes from the sun. Then Dylan rain came to shoot like a gun. The wine in my cup does not taste like wine. I should drink water, this cancer is mine. Just a witness, one hand on my heart.
So yeah, Badger Krome, that's a win. I like this airbrush. Thanks for joining me on the Workshop Recorder. I'll see you next time. Take care.